up, guys? Gavin Michelle here. It has been a while since I've recorded a voiceover for one of my time-lapse videos, so I decided I'd give this one a whirl. And right here, I'm coloring a cover for Amandatory Volume 2, now available on Kickstarter. I'll put the link in the description for those of you who are interested, and you should be, because it's awesome. I actually only colored the cover for this one, but Amanda and I have worked together for quite a while now. My first project in comics was called The Book, which she illustrated. It was for Arcana Comics way back in the day. I think it was like 2012, and we've been pals since then. I've worked on quite a few things for her, and it's a pleasure to be doing that once again with this one. But those of you who've watched my time-lapse before, you're pretty familiar with my color process, if you want to call it that, at this point. What I'm doing right now is, you saw at the beginning, the flats were already laid out. Amanda was even kind enough to do the flats for me, so thank you very much, Amanda, for that. That's a pain in the butt that I did not have to do. But what I'm doing is I laid another layer over that, desaturated the whole thing, and now I'm just shading. Just rendering the whole thing out in grayscale. And what I'm going to do is basically set that to a multiply layer, and that's going to be the shadows. And then I'm going to paint over both those layers with another layer set to dodge or screen. I think I used screen this time. Sometimes I use dodge, sometimes I use screen. And I'll just paint highlights in over that. So this is not all the rendering that will be done. But this video is going to be pretty long, so I decided to split that up into two different videos, and it looks like you're going to get the highlights in part 2. So yeah, totally suspenseful. But in this grayscale rendering, I mean, it looks like I'm doing highlights. Once I set this to multiply, you'll see that everything that looks like a highlight when it's grayscale is just going to be the regular color, and it's only going to get darker from there. That's why you have to paint in the highlights. And some colorists and digital artists will look at this technique as being unpainterly. I don't care. Don't care. I don't have things like integrity or whatever, so this is the way I do it. I used to actually paint it just like I would an oil painting or an acrylic painting. Actually, for a while, I was even painting the whole thing on one layer, and I still like to keep my layers as few as possible, just to avoid confusion, really. When I work on a dozen different layers or 100 or whatever, like some of these guys have like 500 layers that they work on. When I do like that, it just confuses me. I'm a simple-minded creature. I like to stay simple with my techniques. So mostly the layers are, I mean, I'll end up with a few layers, 10 probably most. And most of those will be special effect layers when I'm done doing the actual coloring. So the meat and potatoes work, the actual cake, if you will, is done on 2-3 layers, and then all the icing may take 5 or so layers, but it's just window dressing. It's just the special effects. Right here, I'm working on the, I went back and forth a little bit with the lighting on this one, because, I mean, she's sitting in a pumpkin, and inside the pumpkin is fire, and she's being lit by that. So I kind of went back and forth. Does she have outside lighting too? Is there a light source outside of the pumpkin? Is it just going to be the pumpkin? I figured it'd be pretty weird if it was only the pumpkin lighting her. And I mean, what you get as the finished product is kind of a blending of those two light sources, the fire inside the pumpkin. You also have fire. You have fire coming from behind her inside the pumpkin. You have fire coming from the mouth of the pumpkin, which is lighting underneath her. And then, I don't know. From there, I just kind of was winging it. I mean, like, it's good to keep in mind where your lights are coming from and to let that, dictate the lighting of the overall piece. But, when it starts getting too clinical, when I have to start examining where multiple light sources are coming from, which that's the way it works in real life. In real life, you have multiple light sources. They're coming from multiple different directions. And I don't know, you can't let it drive you crazy. Like, if you overanalyze, you'll just stop painting and have a nervous breakdown. So, and you see here, I'm shading, I'm doing highlights over the shading, doing shadows over the highlights, just figuring things out, man. And you can kind of see I started with a rough square brush and blocked in a lot of things. And I'm kind of going back and forth between zooming out and hitting those broad strokes and zooming in and doing details. And that tends to kind of be how I work. Like, when I get bored doing the broad stuff, I zoom in and do a little bit of detail. When I get bored doing the detail, I zoom out and hit the wider image. And I find if I don't hit details periodically throughout the painting, then they don't get the attention that they need. Like, if I am only doing broader light sources and, painting from afar, and then I save all my detail work for the end, I get overwhelmed with the labor of it. So I have to kind of switch back and forth just for my own sanity. And once again, some artists are gonna frown on this, but I do what I gotta do to get the piece done. You know what I mean? So that's it. That's my technique. And stay tuned for part 2. Don't forget to follow me on Patreon. Don't forget to follow my Instagram at Gavin Michelli Art. And don't forget to look up Amandatory Volume 2 on Kickstarter and pledge to that. Thanks for watching. Come back for part 2. Peace.